Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
The Giants are back. Mike Tomlin is out, and we look ahead to the national title game in college football with Zach Gelb. It's all straight ahead on a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. Welcome into episode number 69 of Gordon Damer on Sports. Lots to get into. Fresh edition of the podcast. We'll obviously hit on the Giants and John Harbaugh. We're going to look ahead to the national championship game in college football, Miami and Indiana. We'll talk with Zach Gelb. And why Mike Tomlin out in Pittsburgh, and while his name will get mentioned in a lot of head coaching openings from now until Kingdom Come, why I think he's going to say no to all of them. But before we get into any of that, I say it every episode, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, whatever platform you're taking the podcast in on. If you're watching, if you're listening, rate the episode, share the episode, leave a review, but most importantly, subscribe. It only takes a second. It doesn't cost you any money. It's absolutely free. And most importantly, it helps the podcast grow as we move into 2026. All right, let's get into the Giants and John Harbaugh. And I'll let you in on a little secret when it comes to sports talk radio. When there's a move where everybody is rightfully over the moon, a trade, a signing, a head coach, there's always going to be somebody who's going to find the negative, right? There's always going to be someone who's going to go the other way just because you need conflict, right? Everybody can't be all happy. Positivity doesn't sell. Negativity sells. And to create conflict, you have to have someone on the other side of things. The Giants' hiring of John Harbaugh is the exception to the rule. This is a home run hire because this is exactly what we have been yelling for the organization to do really for a while, but certainly during this head coaching search. When you've been wandering in the wilderness, like the Giants have been wandering in the wilderness for the last decade, you don't go the route of the first-time head coach anymore. You need someone who's got a resume. There's no more projection. There's no more he'll grow into it. He'll learn on the job while the building basically burns down around him. You need somebody with credibility. You need someone with a resume. The Giants knew that, and they acted accordingly. They have tried the first-time head coach, and it has failed repeatedly, and John Harbaugh is clearly the antidote to all of that. He immediately removes two of the biggest weaknesses the Giants have had for a very long time. First is competence. You don't have to question whether or not John Harbaugh knows what he's doing. You know he knows what he's doing because he has done it successfully at the highest of levels. There's a resume. There is proof. There is a track record of performance. Instead of hoping or projecting or questioning, oh, is this the right move? You know it's the right move because this guy knows what he's doing. The Giants, you could not trust the Giants' judgment. Again, you needed something that was as foolproof as possible. That is John Harbaugh. Number two, credibility. Harbaugh walks in on day one and has a credibility that the last four head coaches have not had. And if you're trying to sell a vision to players, I would think that that would matter, right? Like there's going to be tough times ahead, and you can see how quickly, especially in this day and age, head coaches can lose players if there's not immediate success. I'm not sure that there's going to be immediate success right away, but you know that this guy knows what he's talking about. Now, does this mean the Giants are winning the Super Bowl next year or they're definitely making the playoffs next year? No, of course not. There is no plan that is foolproof. You can find things to nitpick about if you want to, but this was clearly the Giants' top choice, rightfully so, and they landed it. That is saying something for the organization. And here's a part that fans should really latch onto. This is not just John Harbaugh coming here and being the savior. John Harbaugh, he does bring that track record, but this is a guy who you didn't just choose, he chose you. That's a major difference, right? He had an unbelievable amount of leverage in this coaching cycle. He could have gone anywhere. And for a franchise that's been kind of ignored and certainly has been a punchline here for the last decade, I think that actually matters. This tells you there is something worth building on for people outside of the organization. It's easy for the organization to say that, but for somebody to choose you in this situation tells you a lot. And he's not just coming here to be the savior by himself. It looks like, according to all reports, the next offensive coordinator is going to be Todd Monken. He served as the OC with the Baltimore Ravens. And there is nothing, this is very underrated in the valuableness of it. Having an offensive coordinator who's not always looking over his shoulder for the next head coaching job. He's not going to be out the door if you have any success next year. Todd Monken's going to turn 60 next month. He's interviewed for head coaching jobs in the past. He has not gotten any of them. I'm sure he'll interview again. But I would think that at this point, at 60 years old, this is just what he is. And that's great for the Giants. He's a really good offensive coordinator. It's very Patriot-esque with Josh McDaniels up there. He's not going to take another head coaching job, it doesn't seem like. So he's going to be there for the long haul. And having someone who can install an offense and develop a quarterback and stay put is massive. There's continuity there, and that is valuable. Also, I think the hire tells you that Joe Schoen is no longer the most powerful name in the room or the most powerful voice in the room. Harbaugh is. Now, Schoen still has a role, but the hierarchy is obvious now. And honestly, that probably works best for everyone. And if it works, great, there'll be no changes. But if it doesn't work for any reason next year, I think we all know who's going to be the first to go, and it's not John Harbaugh. So, look, the past decade for the Giants has been one of the worst stretches of football for an organization that has been around 100 years. The Giants, they didn't get every single thing wrong, but boy, they got a whole lot more wrong than they got right. And it has been lost season after lost season. But now there are real signals that the Giants are ready to reemerge as a functional NFL organization. They went out and just did the right stuff. They hired an actual head coach, a head coach who chose the job in part because of the quarterback that is already here. And now that comes with something that the Giants have not had in a very long time. It comes with real expectations. And those real expectations come right away, right? John Harbaugh is 63 years old. But you know what? Pressure is a privilege. This case, that is absolutely the case. It is a privilege. It beats the alternative of Googling the mock drafts when you're halfway through the season because you know this is another year that is already lost by the time you get to October. It also proves one more thing. The Giants, as an organization, are finally back on track. One of the worst decades you could ever experience. And finally, they are reemerging, and there's real signs for optimism for the first time in a very long time. Meanwhile, the Jets are as lost as ever. But of course, that's a story for another day and a story that is never ending. All right, we're joined now by national talk show host Zach Gelb, who knows everything about college football there is to know. So our source to go to when it comes to breaking down the national title game in college football as we get ready for Indiana and Miami. Zach, thanks for giving us a couple of minutes, man.
Gordon, appreciate it. I should probably put that in my Twitter bio. Gordon Damer's resident national college football reporter.
Expert. No, just go with reporter. Expert. If I had said to you before the season the national title game is going to be Indiana and Miami, how quickly would you have laughed me out of the room?
Would have never believed it. Miami, I thought that when they lost those two games in ACC play, they wouldn't make the college football playoff, but clearly that wasn't the case, and they opened up a can of whoop ass on some teams. And Indiana, oh my, like going into the season, I thought Indiana was going to regress from last year because they made the college football playoff, but I thought the fact that they're undefeated, and not only undefeated, they just bludgeoned Alabama, and then followed it up with even more of an ass-kicking up against Oregon. What Cignetti has done, if he wins his national championship on Monday night, I don't know if there's ever a more impressive coaching job that I've ever seen in college football.
How are they doing this? Because I see they're not loaded with like five-star talent that they've just bought in the portal. How have they been able to build this thing?
Cignetti came in, and when you take over a program that does not win, and you talk a big game, it's one thing to talk that big game, right, but he just exudes, confidence. That's what he does. And he walks in, he's like, Google me. All I do is win. We're going to beat the crap out of Michigan. We're going to beat the crap out of Ohio State. And I remember doing the show, and I was like, dude, pump the brakes. Like, you're at Indiana. And then he talks about how all he does is smack top 25 teams, and they lost to Notre Dame last year. And then to have this redemption tour, oh my, it's special. He's utilized the transfer portal. He's had big-time confidence, and he hit on his quarterback this year. Fernando Mendoza reminds me a lot like Joe Burrow. Now, I'm not saying he's going to go on to have the pro career of Joe Burrow, but when Joe Burrow left Ohio State, went to LSU, and the difference is Joe, he played a year before he broke out at LSU. Like, Nick Brossette was the most memorable offensive player doing those shows, and then the following season, Joe has 60 passing touchdowns. Now, Mendoza's numbers aren't that prodigious, but you go from no one talking about you in the NFL draft to now you're going to be the number 1 overall pick. You win the Heisman Trophy, and you probably are going to be an undefeated national champion. I think the storylines of Burrow and Mendoza are eerily similar.
I don't want to get too far past this, but for the Indiana thing, is this a one-year thing, do you think? Or do you think that they are now, maybe not year in and year out at this level, clearly, but are they now an established program where you're going to have to think about them for the years to come?
As long as Cignetti is their coach, that's a team that I would say should be a perennial college football playoff team. I'm not saying they're going to go national championship game every year. I think that'd be crazy to state that about any team in this sport right now. Like, look at Georgia. Georgia was supposed to be the next Alabama.
Right.
Georgia hasn't won a national championship in the last 3 go-arounds at it, and it's not like their teams haven't been good. The last 2 years, they've had buys in the 12-team format, and they get upset coming off the bye, and that's the other thing. That's another feather in the cap of Cignetti. I know the 12-team playoffs only been around for 2 years. 1 and 7 are the teams that have the bye. The only person that has a win is Kurt Cignetti. and Indiana, a basketball school, beat the living snot out of Alabama, which is the creme de la creme program. And Alabama basketball is like better than Alabama football right now. It's a wild world that we're living in.
Is this the result of the portal? How like is the SEC not going to be the SEC that we've known, or is this just a down year for the SEC and Alabama's Indiana's kind of been like the perfect storm of everything going right?
The SEC and the Big Ten are the 2 power conferences, obviously, as you know, in college football. Forever, it was the SEC's the preeminent conference, not even close. From top to bottom, the SEC still may be better, but in terms of getting to the top, this has been a game of tug of war the last 3 years, and the Big Ten had Michigan win, Ohio State win. SEC can't win a national championship on Monday night, but the Big Ten can with Indiana. So it has been the Big Ten and SEC a game of equals, and the Big Ten can state that they're the best conference now in the sport. Maybe not from top to bottom, but they could have the next 3 or the last 3 national champs if Indiana gets the job done. So that's the structure right now in the sport, where it's the Power 2, where it's the Big Ten and the SEC. They're playing their own game of tug of war. And then underneath that, you have the ACC and the Big 12 playing a game of tug of war. And last year, the Big 12 got 2 teams in. And, you looked at it and you said to yourself, the ACC got 2 teams in. But you then looked at it this year and you were like, oh, the Big 12 felt like for most of the year they were better. But then the ACC, they got Miami, and not even the ACC conference champ got in, and because it was Duke, but the ACC gets in, and Miami now goes on this run. So there's 2 games of tug of war in this sport, and it's the Big 12 and the ACC in the second tier, but the top tier, it's the Big 10 and the SEC.
I know that the 12 team is only a couple of years old, but the playoffs have been around for a little while. I mean, if Indiana goes in there and wins this game in dominating fashion, like anything like they have these first 2 games, do they go down as, forget about like projecting at the NFL level. I'm just talking about for college football. Is this one of the most dominant runs that we have ever seen?
In recent memory, like the last 5 to 10 years or so, LSU was to me, that with that team of Burrow and Chase and Justin Jefferson, that's been that was the dominant. Even Michigan, Michigan had the scandal and everything, but they were undefeated. The way I think you say it is most impressive, because if you would have, Gordon, you've been doing this a long time,
right?
If you would have said 2 years ago Like,
Indiana.
let's say someone called your show 2 years ago
Right.
and said, "Hey, this Cignetti guy,
Yeah.
he's going to have Indiana in the playoff, and then the following season, he's going to have them in the national championship game where they're going to be undefeated. They're going to be an 8.5-point favorite to win the national title." You would have hung up on that person before they could have finished the sentence, and you probably would have called them an idiot and a moron and a dope. This is like, I was thinking about this. Is it the most impressive coaching job in the history of sports I've ever seen? Like, Herb Brooks immediately comes to mind.
Sure.
Like, 1980 Miracle on Ice, that's got to be better. But in college football, like, this is the losingest program.
Yeah.
And the last 2 years, have not only been winners, because like you could be a winner and not win a national championship, but they have now the last 2 years a winning program, and they have a chance to be an undefeated national champion, and they should. Like, it's not a lock that they're going to win the game. I think actually Miami's getting a little bit disrespected, but Indiana should win the game on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely incredible, and I just kind of wonder, like, are there any lessons that other schools that are not, what considered powerhouses, like Indiana clearly was not considered a powerhouse, that they can learn from the Cignetti, or is it basically just because of him that this is happening?
So when I was at Temple, the Temple football program was a doormat. Mm-hmm. They hired the right guy in Matt Rule, who developed his players, and they put 15 to 20 guys in the NFL. They beat Penn State for the first time in 74 years. They won an American Athletic Conference championship. They went to 2 of them, and they had Notre Dame in town. They almost beat them when College Game Day was there. Like, that stuff to me was surreal. And then this story is that on steroids. But that way that Matt Rule did things would not work today in college football. It was development. It was taking, guys that were just underlooked, which is still a thing, and developing them. But all those guys, if there was the transfer portal, if there was NIL, they would have got offers after the first year. Cignetti, what people could take from this is you hire the right coach, you have the financial boosters, and you have a guy that knows how to identify guys that were maybe overlooked. Like, when Mendoza was at Cal, was anyone saying that this was going to be, the number 1 overall pick? No one said it a month into the season. But that's the way that it turned out. So in this game, if you have the right coach or the right personality, and Indiana has the financial backing, things could change very quickly, even to a level that we never imagined them.
So often, and not just in college football, but certainly in college basketball, when you get a smaller school that has not had success like Indiana has had, the worst thing for the long-term prospects of the program is to have success, because that guy is going to leave the program and go to a bigger job. That doesn't seem like the case with Cignetti in Indiana. Why is it different? Is it just the financial backing of Indiana and the boosters?
I think also this is a guy that's 65 years old. Mm-hmm. So if he wanted to go take Penn State, or if he wanted Michigan, right? Whatever job, but like LSU was open, Florida was open this year. If he wanted the big boy job, he could have done it. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't going to do what Lane Kiffin did. He knew he had a team that could go win a national championship. And also, regardless what this guy does the next 4 or 5 years, even if they don't win the national championship on Monday night, the dude's a legend.
Yeah.
a legend at Indiana. And this was a guy that, yes, he was on Saban's staff, but there's a lot of smaller schools. And I think there's an appreciation that they, even though Indiana was not considered a big job, but it is a Power 4, Power 5 job.
Right.
And they took a chance on him, and they believed in him. And here we are, where he's had the ultimate success in front of anyone that they could have imagined. So I'm not saying he's not hungry, because the dude's a hungry coach. But if he was 35, if he was 40, it'd be a totally different game. He probably would leave. But now in a different stage of his life, I think he's on the back 9, but he's not on hole 17 or 18. He's like walking up on the fairway on 14, and he's got like an 8 or a 9 stroke lead. And I don't think he wants to go to a different country club.
Let's talk about Miami. It feels like, for me, as a casual football fan, or casual college football fan, I've heard the U is back probably 5 times in the last 2 decades. Are they actually back now, or how do you see that with their program?
So that's always an interesting question, because like Texas will claim that they're back. And hey, Texas up until this year made back-to-back college football playoff appearances. So are they back to being a year in and year out national championship contender and one of the most feared teams in college football? No.
Right.
But here they are with Mario Cristobal, a Miami guy, someone that has won with the program when he was a player, waited all those years to get the job, left Oregon to come on here. And the first few years, it didn't look all that great. You know, I think there was a blown game up against Georgia. I think it was Georgia. I forget who it was, but it was terrible. The mismanagement. It was a bad ACC showing. And this year, it's not like it all came together in the regular. Like, we all knew Miami was one of the more talented teams in the country, but they had 2 losses in the ACC this year, and they were by minuscule margins, to Louisville and SMU. But they got an opportunity to get into the dance. And even though I thought Notre Dame could go on a run, they beat Notre Dame. And the committee the whole time was avoiding that Notre Dame-Miami debate. But once it came down to it, where they had the Notre Dame-Miami debate, how do you not put the team in that beat Notre Dame?
Yikes.
So they were a little fired up because everyone was like, they're not going to do anything. They shouldn't be in the college football playoff. No, they got in. And Carson Beck had a great redemption story. And they have such a talented roster, unbelievable defensive players, physical running backs. And they're alive on Monday. Like, the spread, it's weird because I'm gonna defend Miami, but then I'm gonna bet against them.
Right.
Like, I sit here and I look at that, I'm like, 8.5 points.
That's a lot.
That's disrespectful.
Yeah.
But like, I've lost enough bets to then say to myself, if Vegas is begging you to do one thing, and I think they're begging you to plus the 8.5 points, then do the other thing. And if Indiana wins this game 30-20, well, would anyone be shocked? No, I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever.
In terms of the game itself, how do you see it playing out? What do you see, like, the storylines? What will we be talking about after this game is over?
I will be curious, and I know each school gets a certain ticket allotment, but I wonder what the breakdown of the crowd's going to be. Like, Indiana in the Rose Bowl, that was an Indiana home game. Yeah. Indiana, the last game up against Oregon, and they're going up against 2 great brands in Alabama and Oregon, 2 passionate fan bases. Those were Indiana home games. Now, the Miami fan isn't the greatest sports fan in the world, but the U fan is a different type of fan. Mm-hmm. And I'll be curious in those tickets that are up for grabs, how much the local fan does get them, or does the Indiana fan that said, oh, if you would have told me this like 3 years ago that this was a possibility, do they just spend like crazy amounts of money and just find a way to get in? So I think the crowd breakdown outside of the tickets that are allotted to each school is going to be fascinating. But either way, like, yes, there's a winner and a loser. But in terms from a content perspective, if Miami wins, they use back the Miami native background kid and Mario Cristobal, who went to the school and played for the school, right? He brought his alma mater back to prominence and back to the mountaintop. And then on the other side, it would be Mendoza and Cignetti having maybe the most unbelievable college football story that I've ever seen. Ultimately, as much talent as Miami has, and you may look at them and go, oh, top to bottom, they're a more talented team. With how Indiana has just bludgeoned these teams and how they're undefeated. Right. I can't pick against Indiana until they go down. So if I look like a fool on Monday night and Miami's having a hometown fiesta, so be it, but I'm not picking against Mendoza and Cignetti.
All right, 2 more things for you. Dante Moore says he's going back to Oregon for next year. Looked like he could have been the second pick in the draft. Do you think that was the right decision for him? And how much do you think that the fact that the Jets are picking second played into that?
So I'm a little bit conflicted on this because for his personal development, I think it's better for him. Mm-hmm. But then, and I know these kids get so much money now, like he'll get $6 or $8 million to go back to Oregon. But is it going to get that much better than being the second overall pick in the draft? Like, he would have been the second overall pick in the draft.
Yeah.
So what happens if you go back and you don't play well? Yeah. What happens if you go back?
Matt Barkley from a few years back, right? Like,
sure. And there's just a better quarterback class than what there is now. What happens if you go back and you get hurt? And here's the other thing. They just brought in Dylan Raiola, who's been a starter the last 2 years, five-star, former prospect at Nebraska. And he says he's going to wait a year. But what happens if they're 5 or 6 games into the season and Moore struggles a little bit? Do I think Moore in most drafts would be the second overall pick? No, I don't. But in this draft, he would have been. So he needed more development. And for his own personal development, it's good. But then I say, what's the end goal? And do I think that it's going to be that much better than the second overall pick? I don't. The Jet question is interesting. And I know the Jets are low-hanging fruit. And trust me, as a Patriot fan, they are easy to beat up on.
Right.
But the Jets have 5 first-round draft picks in the next 2 years. I don't believe in Aaron Glenn. But Muji has put this team in position to go get a lot of resources. Who knows if Breece Hall is going to be back, but you got Garrett Wilson. I get it. Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, Geno Smith. The Jets have had terrible quarterbacks, but I don't think this was more looking at it and saying, hey, I'm not going there because it's the Jets. I think he wanted to go back to Oregon to win a national championship. And also, I think he knew with how his season ended, he wasn't at his best right now and he needs another year of development. Because remember, he transferred over from UCLA. He sat behind Dylan Gabriel for a year and then got his opportunity. So maybe he just wants 2 years at this of him being the starting quarterback with the Ducks of Oregon.
The 12-team playoff, are they going to expand this, do you think, in the near future? Because it's been such football, college, pro is our national religion at this point. I mean, we just cannot get enough of it. You think that and how do you think it grows in the future?
So I was not a favor of going from 4 to 12. 12 has worked. I can't sit here and say that it hasn't worked. And you're right. Football is our religion. Football is our drug. The NFL could urinate on us. College football, they spit on us all the time. And each and every week we sit down, we park our asses on the couch. You get your nachos, your pigs in the blanket, your pizzas, you go to the games and you spend a ridiculous amount of money, whether it's betting or watching college and pro football. But I know they pushed back the deadline to make that decision. If I was the commissioner, and I know they don't have one, I would go to 14, and I'm not a fan of expansion, but I would go to 14, and I would have 11 play 14, 12 play 13 to play into the 11th and 12 spots for a 12-team playoff.
Gotcha.
My fear is that they're going to water it down. I think that they will expand to 16, but if it only took 2 or 3 years to go from 4, well, it took a while to go from 4 to 12, but then only 2 or 3 years to go to 12 to 16, this thing will inevitably just expand more and more. The farthest I'm willing to go on this and like the history of the CFP would be to 16, but I would keep it to some resemblance of a 12-team format, even if that means adding in 2 more teams to have a play-in. But I think they'll ultimately go to 16.
Zach, great stuff. We'll be laying the points with Indiana based on your advice and your advice alone. So I appreciate the time, and we'll catch up down the road, pal.
Yeah, and if the bet doesn't hit, file your complaints to 1-800-GORDON-DAMER, all right?
Exactly.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
All right, finally, let's jump into the Mike Tomlin situation. Tomlin walking away from the Steelers does so with a career record of 193, 114, and 2, tied with Chuck Noll for the most regular season wins. He also walks away with the best winning percentage, 628 in Steelers franchise history. He had 13 playoff appearances, 8 division titles, a Super Bowl championship, and maybe most impressive of all the accomplishments in his time in Pittsburgh, never had a losing season. That is quite an accomplishment in and of itself. All right, so immediately the question becomes, where is Mike Tomlin going to coach next? He is taking the year off, says he's not going to coach anywhere in this coaching cycle. And it does make me wonder if Mike Tomlin has coached his final game in the NFL. And before people start losing their minds, how could Mike Tomlin not coach again in the NFL with that record and that resume? I think context matters here a little bit. All right, so over the last 25 years, NFL teams have employed more than 130 head coaches. 12 franchises have had 7 head coaches in that span. And then the Raiders, they're number 1 on the list. They have gone through 13 different head coaches. That is a number 1 that you do not want to have. So, yet for 2 decades, Mike Tomlin and really John Harbaugh in Baltimore, they have been the constants in that entire time. You go look at the longest tenured head coaches in NFL history. Both of those guys are on that top 10 of list. They're not 1 and 2, but they're in the top 10. And since Tomlin was hired back in 2007, the average coaching tenure in the NFL is 3 seasons. And keep in mind, that's factoring in the Steelers, who had the same guy for, 18 years? So that average would go even down from there. So there's no debate. Mike Tomlin is walking away from the most stable organization, forget about in football, in the major sports in North America. There is no more stable an organization than the Steelers. 3 head coaches since 1969. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin. That is a situation that is very rare. The owner does not get involved, the GMs don't panic, and you don't get put on the hot seat after 1 bad year. So let's stop pretending that Mike Tomlin is leaving that situation to just all of a sudden go jump on the coaching carousel that spins every single year. He's not leaving that kind of stability for just anyone. If he's going somewhere else after this in a year from now, the target list is going to be very, very narrow. If he coaches again, it will be for a stable organization that is generally a winning situation. And let's be honest, those kind of jobs don't come open very, very often. Like this year, there's 2 of them, and he just left 1 of them. So there's really only 1 that's available. And the harder truth is, I think that when Mike Tomlin does decide to get back into the coaching game in a year from now or longer, he's got 2 massive blind spots that he has to address for whatever team wants to hire him. First off, the fact he's never developed a quarterback. You think about the success that he had in all that time in Pittsburgh, never had to develop a quarterback. In the modern NFL, there's no more important relationship between the coach and the QB. That's the one that defines success for organizations. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. Now, he inherited Ben Roethlisberger, but then post Big Ben, the Steelers have kind of wandered around in quarterback purgatory with no clear vision, no development plan, and no real identity on offense. They try to win with defense and just scoring enough points. Now, I don't think it's all his fault for that, but it's an issue that's there, which leads to the second problem is that he never built a strong offensive coaching staff. That's a problem. In his entire time in Pittsburgh, not one single offensive assistant outside of Bruce Arians, who was a holdover from Bill Cowher, got a head coaching job. Think about that. This is an organization that's successful every single year, and teams are always trying to pick somebody apart from that winning situation to come to their situation. Nobody's doing that with the Steelers, and I think that matters in the modern NFL because head coaches now are developers. They're developers of quarterbacks, but they're also developers of coaches. So Mike Tomlin has a lot of strengths. He's certainly, in terms of leadership and culture, but offensive identity, it's just not there. So that would concern you if you're a team looking for a new head coach. So where this goes, I'm sure that Mike Tomlin, when he decides he wants to get back into it, he's going to have no shortage of opportunities to do so. The phone is going to be ringing plenty, much like it was with Bill Cowher back in the day. For the next 5 years, anytime that there's a head coaching opening, you will hear Mike Tomlin's name. But just like Bill Cowher, he might not ever coach another game because the situation he's coming from almost certainly is going to be better than whatever situation he's looking at next. Plus, the talk is he's going into TV. TV's undefeated, and it's stable, it's lucrative, and for someone like Tomlin, who is authentic and authoritative and charismatic, I think that's going to be very tough to walk away from. So if you're Mike Tomlin, do you gamble with what your legacy and your reputation is, and more importantly, your sanity is, for another job with some organization where the average coaching tenure is 3 years? I think the answer is you don't. Now, we'll see. Maybe he takes some time off from this next season where he looks to reinvent himself some, especially on the offensive side of things. Maybe he looks at this time to kind of think about what he wants to do next time differently and build relationships maybe with cutting-edge offensive coaches who can take his game to the next level. But I would think that might be a stretch. It would be easy to understand why he wouldn't feel the need to reinvent himself, considering he's never had a losing season, right? I mean, he's had nothing but success in his entire tenure in the NFL. So if Mike Tomlin never coaches another game, it won't be because he couldn't or he didn't get the opportunity. He survived longer in a world than just about anyone. And maybe the real victory is recognizing that the next job just is not worth the cost. All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've not done it already, hit that subscribe button, whatever platform you are taking the podcast in on. If it's on YouTube, certainly hit us on that with the subscription as well. All on the next episode. Coming up next time, we will get into more NFL after a wild weekend, I'm sure. We'll look back on the college football national title game. Lots to do next time right here on Gordon Damer on Sports.